And what kind of role should young researchers be preparing themselves for in this new phase?
In fact, what we talk about, all the stuff which is happening now, few people in future would keep on dealing with those problems. One of them is sustainable development and climate change. The second one of them is related to intelligent machines.
Thank you so much for joining us, sir. It's truly a pleasure having you here. We're truly honored.
Our pleasure is mine, and I've been meaning to visit Parul University for a long time. And everything that I've seen here is so positive. I'm so happy that I came here and I learned about the university and all the activities here. Very unique place indeed.
We're truly grateful for your words. So I just kind of want to jump into certain questions that we have prepared for you. And one of them is, you've had many leadership roles, and one of them, or two of them rather, have caught our attention. Specifically, your leadership role in Startup India, which has had a very lasting effect. Now, we've seen science-led innovation move out of the lab and into real-world products and businesses. Now, what do you think makes science startups succeed in India today? And how should universities like ours help students and researchers who are interested in turning their very abstract ideas into something that is tangible in reality?
Yes, so there are two aspects to your question. One is the aspect which is related to policy, and what is it that our industry and government, and indeed even our educational institutions should do in seeding the ideas of startup, entrepreneurship, innovation, and so on. The other aspect of your question is related to individual. What kind of skills and mindset and culture and learning they need to develop in order to be an entrepreneur. So these are two different things. So the policy aspect, if I were to look at that first, since I've been part of Ministry of Science and Technology, so when we started looking at it in 2015, when this Honorable Prime Minister said about Startup India movement, at that point there were less than 100 startups in the country. Now there are 1.5 lakhs, 150,000 startups.
Yeah.
So this was a very quick journey, scale up going in 10 years there. And what made it possible? So let me just count some of the factors that made it possible. The first thing, of course, the idea in our educational institutions that they can actually not only get a job, but they can also create a company and create jobs. So cultural aspect, basically, that people have to be psychologically prepared for this, and more of it is happening now than ever before. The second thing is about the policies of the government related to startups. For example, that we realize that innovation in a startup is not a single event. So it's like a chain.
Okay.
The strength of a chain depends on the weakest link. So you have to look at what the weakest links are. What are the links in fact? So you have to prepare people for startups. So it's a pre-incubation activities that have to be supported. Then there is you get into incubation, then there is valley of death. You need to raise resources. You need to understand the market. You need to do a whole lot of different things before you would be successful. So basically, this whole roadmap about what are the activities that need to be supported along the way, right? Not just leave out a gap somewhere in between. That led to a program called NIDHI in Department of Science and Technology, which has supported over 100 incubators, and thousands of companies have graduated from there. And similarly, the Atal Innovation Mission came in about the same time, and they created a lot of opportunities for startups and so on. As far as individuals are concerned, this is coming from the side of policy and the programs of the government, but also investors. So the availability of venture capital or early stage capital was very critical in all of this, and that ecosystem has come up very rapidly and with some scale. So it's very easy to find, today, like technology funds that fund startup companies to the tune of, the size of these funds keeps growing. In fact, there's a new fund introduced by the government, which is for R&D and innovation led by industry. So this is worth 20,000 crore rupees per year for 5 years. So this is going to be transformative because R&D is not only done in academia, but a whole lot of time it is done in industry, for industry. It has to be led by industry. So it's a very new kind of idea that government would fund R&D in private sector. So all of these are enabling factors. Now coming to the educational institutions such as Parul University, so that we need to seed this gospel, if you would, of startups, of innovation, and just to in our approach to education, to say education is not an end in itself. So we learn things in order to convert them into opportunities. And so that requires a different mold of education. This is not an education for cracking exams only.
Yeah.
It's an education that converts into something practical, which connects with the society, which connects with the market, connects with the economy, connects with jobs, and all of that. So, more and more of it is happening as to how we approach education. Not education as historically we think about it, is like cracking these exams and getting a job, but education which is more holistic, which is more learning, which is more applied, if you would, which is more problem solving.
Okay.
Whatever I've seen here in Parul University is very impressive because it seems to point in that direction.
We try our best, I guess. That's what we can say. And I really appreciate your whole idea of education and how it can be more holistic than it currently is in a lot of places. Now, this kind of like leads me to my second question, which is, you are the president of the Indian National Science Academy, and you're basically leading a community that shapes how India thinks about science, not just on a national level, but also on the global stage. Now, what do you see as the biggest shift happening right now in India, or is, to be more specific, in Indian science? And what kind of role should young researchers be preparing themselves for in this new phase?
So of course, that these are what's happening in India in terms of technology is also happening globally. So, for example, a lot more effort related to sustainable development and technologies which are needed for it. But sustainable development is a global problem. In fact, what we talk about, all the stuff which is happening now, which that people in future would keep on dealing with those problems forever. One of them is sustainable development and climate change. The second one of them is related to intelligent machines. So both of these problems have global footprint because and they're also very pervasive in that they impact every aspect of our life. So all of these problems are of significance to Indian science, but also developing technology which is appropriate for India, and indeed for other countries which are in similar kind of developmental path as India. So that we have to be Glocal about it, which means we think global and we develop things and we act local. So combining the best of global science and insights together with finding solutions to local problems and implementing them. So India certainly is working very hard. Our scientist and scientific ecosystem is developing very fast. In fact, some of the indicators that is developing is that like 10 years ago, India was number 9 or so in number of publications, and it has climbed to number 3 today. And that's true for publications, even cutting-edge science areas like artificial intelligence, nanotechnology, materials, and so on. So clearly that we are generating knowledge. So these are indicators of generation of knowledge. They are not indicators of consumption of knowledge.
Yeah.
Okay, so now, of course, that there are also more patents being filed. We are number 6 in the world today in terms of number of patents which are being filed. In terms of number of startups, number 3 in the world, number of startups. In fact, number of unicorns also, they're number 3 in the world in last 10 years. All right, so the speed has been pretty good, pretty impressive. More of it is happening now and would continue to happen. Some of these things are exponential. But anyway, the challenges are to give you an idea about, let's say, a specific challenge that help illustrate how the technology of today has to work in our context. So there was, for example, a policy, a law, which was 100 years old, which basically said that in India, nobody can do surveying and mapping without very tedious government approvals. So regulation have been very tight. What I'm trying to convey to you is that our science and technology also is being unshackled from regulation. For science and technology to work, the policy and rules and regulations have to be right. And so this is an example wherein, from the days of British, they said that, no, you cannot do surveying and mapping. In fact, one day when I got up, I said, look, the maps we are using, they're not Indian maps. Okay, the data is Indian, right? But they are made by some other company which is making money from our data. And in fact, the software, people who develop those maps are also sitting in Bangalore. Okay, so it's not like you lack science and technology and your data, but you are not able to monetize it because the right policy is not there. So when I was in Department of Science and Technology, we changed that policy. Okay, that today the policy is that any Indian entity, public or private, can do surveying and mapping at any scale. 5 centimeter scale digitally, flying drone and with LiDAR if you want. And no approval is needed of any kind. So it's totally deregulated. A geospatial data sector, which has such a huge impact on Indian economy. Now, what do you think? People think that this has an impact of maybe a few hundreds of crores or thousands of crores rupees. No. It has an impact of tens of lakhs of crore rupees. Okay, and you know why? Because a whole lot of people in India, they do not have ownership certificate for their land in rural areas. And I'm sure there's, similar kind of problems are there in Africa, elsewhere, right? So now what does it do? It basically, land is yours, but you don't have ownership. You cannot actually go to a bank and take loan against that land. And there's litigation going on all the time, 50% court cases are because of that. So now, because of this policy, even private sector is doing surveying and mapping. The whole country is being mapped at a scale of 5 centimeter digitally. And so it basically means all the non-performing land assets which are sitting there locked up like gold, they will come into economy, right? And the impact of that is huge. So this is, I'm giving an example of how global science of surveying and mapping today digitally, drones and LiDAR and everything else, is going to work in our local context in solving our problem by having right kind of policy. So you need science and technology, you also need right kind of regulations and policy for things to work together. The maps which are coming up now made by Indian companies are more accurate than the maps that we were using with satellites. The reason is because satellite produces one kind of map, but when you do surveying and mapping on ground and when you do it with LiDAR here, it produces greater clarity. For example, 3D views of a street, 3D views were not allowed earlier by law.
Yes.
But today, you can map every house, every street.
Yeah. So thank you so much for being with us today, sir. And we hope to see you more here in the future, especially since we actually look forward to, we already know in Parul, we already have a very good ecosystem in regards to the facilities and whatnot, but we also do have a lot of researchers and students that are coming up. And we're hoping for your leadership or your advice in the coming future in regards to how we can move forward into bringing to practicality or into reality this vision that has been laid out so beautifully. So thank you for being with us, sir.
Thank you very much for having me, and it's a pleasure talking to you.
My pleasure.